So in yesterday's lesson, we were learning about how energy moves through an ecosystem, and we saw how it moves in a one-way stream through things like a food chain and a food web. And then we started to introduce this. This is the pyramid of energy, and this pyramid is designed to show how energy not only moves through an ecosystem, but how it is used through an ecosystem. So it's built on what's called trophic levels. Okay, and trophic levels are these different colors all the way up the pyramid. If you look in your notes, you're filling in those different sections of the pyramid to see how energy moves. It starts with sunlight, but eventually that sunlight is going to move and be collected by primary producers. That's your first base pyramid. It's the one that collects the most energy and has the most energy available to collect. It's the sunlight. But after that, primary producers are going to use 90% of the energy they collect from the sun, and they're only going to pass on 10% of that energy onto the next level in the environment. And what would be the next thing in a food chain past primary producers? Why, it's our herbivores. Our herbivores are what eat primary producers. And those herbivores are going to use most all the energy that they get from the plants they eat. In fact, they're only going to pass on 10% of that energy onto the top columns or the top trophic levels of our ecological pyramid, right? And these top levels are made up of your omnivores and your carnivores. I think our notes say to label it carnivores. And every time you move up a level, though, we're only going to be passing on 10% of the energy. The rest of it is used. But what for? Well, you can see here pictures of these organisms like plants and algae, the primary producers. There's our herbivores that eat just plants, followed by our carnivores, and then our apex predator up there, apex being the top of the pyramid, our alligator. Our textbook shows us how there's only 10% being passed on. As you read page 77, it says that only a little bit of energy is passed on. This is because, you can look at that section, this is because organisms spend much of that energy using life processes like respiration, movement, growth, reproduction. All these things are going to require energy. And sure enough, even these life processes isn't all that wastes the energy or uses the energy. A lot of the energy that collected from organisms is going to be released in the environment as heat too. And so we have all these things happening that causes only just 10% to be passed on. And so there are other ways of looking at this pyramid, because there's only so much energy available. Ecologists look at this pyramid and trophic levels, and they note that each level of the pyramid has a smaller and smaller population because there just isn't as much energy available. So your notes have two students who spend time discussing how their ecosystem should look based on what they learned about trophic levels. And so Ned and Sue are analyzing their food web data, trying to decide if there would be more herbivores or carnivores in their ecosystem. After looking at the trophic goals, they disagreed on the populations. Read the statements below, decide who you agree with, and explain why. Ned says, in order for the trophic goals to be balanced, both herbivores and carnivores should have about the same number in the population. Sue says, looking at how energy passes through trophic levels, there would be a bigger herbivore population and a smaller carnivore population. So who's correct here in their thinking? Well, if Ned had his way, his ecosystem would have the same amount of herbivores as carnivores. And so his ecological pyramid would look more like a block, wouldn't it? If you have this many carnivores and this many herbivores, how is that going to support such big creatures that your carnivores are? There wouldn't be enough herbivores in the environment. You would lose your herbivores quickly and things would fall apart. See, Sue realizes that through trophic levels, you're going to have a big population of primary producers on the bottom, followed by a smaller population of herbivores because energy is lost, and then finally carnivores up on top as a much smaller group. So here we want to build our own ecosystem using some mathematics. So in your notes on the very bottom, it has this pyramid, and we're told that this environment has a primary producer, meadow grass. And that meadow grass produces 56,320 units of energy. And that 56,320 units of energy is going to supply our ecosystem. But remember, that energy is going to be lost from one trophic level to the next. So we also know that we have different organisms in our environment, lizards, crickets, and hawks, and they require a certain amount of energy to live in the environment. So our question is, can we make an ecosystem with the maximum amount of each creature at each trophic level? Well, this first has to be like a food chain. We have to work it like a food chain, and so that the organisms are organized well enough that we see how energy would move through an ecosystem. And so my first trophic level, I'm not going to put the hawks, because the hawks don't eat meadow grass, but crickets do. So that's where I'm going to put my crickets. Okay. What eats crickets in my list? Well, if I look back, my choices are lizards or hawks. So lizards seem to make the most sense there. They're not using as much energy as the hawks are, so they must be pretty small lizards. And then our hawks would sit on top. Okay. The next thing that's really important here is to keep track of how much energy I have. It says that our meadow grass produces 56,320 units of energy. But I know that as I go up to the next level, I'm only going to take 10% of that energy along to the next level. So if you know your math tricks pretty well, that means that we just move our decimal place over to the left once. And so that means that we'll have 5,632 units of energy available for crickets. Now that's energy, that's not total crickets. But again, we're going to do 10%, and we'll have 563.2 and 10% again, so that our hawks will only have 56.32 energy units available. So that kind of tells you right there, we're going to have smaller amounts as we go up our food supply. So how do we figure out how many crickets, lizards, and hawks? Well, if we know the energy, then we can determine how many we can fit, because every cricket requires 3.2 units of energy. So if I know how much units of energy I have, then it's a simple division problem. Divided by 3.2. Okay? Now that should come out to something pretty even. I haven't done this in a while, but I think it's something like that. 1,760 crickets. Maybe 1,780. But you'll have to do that math. I don't have a calculator on me right now. Okay? So we do the same for the lizards, but we're not going to do 3.2 because lizards require a little more. They require 8 units of energy. So 563.2 divided by 8 gives us our lizard count. Now this one I remember, it ends up being 70.4. So how many crickets can I actually support? I can support 70, but I don't have enough for 71 just yet. And it's not like I'm going to say I can support 70 lizards and then like half a lizard, because that doesn't really work either for living things. So I'm going to have to say 70 lizards I can support. Okay, the last one, my hawks, I divide by 22 because that's what it says. Hawks are 22 units each. So we're not going to get a whole lot of hawks in here, and that's normal, right? That's how an environment works. So 56.32 divided by 22 should give us 2.56. Now here you're saying, well, math would tell me to round up to 3. But remember the context here. We have an environment and we can only support 2. We don't have enough to support 3. I mean, we could try, but it wouldn't work. We wouldn't have enough energy for 3 of them to survive. So 2 hawks is really where we have to end up. So there is our engineering done to build our environment. All right. Skipping the exploration for this time, I think that covers our notes.